use both technical and user-friendly service keywords. So this is kind of what we were talking about in the previous point, but a bulleted list on your services pages, if kind of near the middle or maybe at the top of the bottom third, you have a pretty good collection. I would say you could even go, we try to do on a desktop view, we try to do maybe 3 columns is pretty typical. But I would say you can go 15 bulleted items, 21 bulleted items, even 24. It can be a pretty solid chunk of stuff. But what you want to do there, we mentioned this previously, but you want to, companies are always trying to punch up and have sort of like, no, we want to be the elite janitorial services brand for the Southeast. That's fine. But in this bulleted list, you can say trash removal. Or whatever it is. And so this is kind of your spot to punch down a little bit and say, we know how people are searching for it, and we're going to just put it in the list. Here's a really good example. We do a lot with commercial and industrial painters and flooring companies, polyurea versus epoxy. And so sometimes if you have your services page, you may not offer epoxy. You may be doing polyurea, which is a different product. It's a different material. And so a bulleted list doesn't necessarily say, hey, we offer this, but you can have the topic polyurea versus epoxy as a bulleted item that says, your bulleted list could be contextualized or something like, we meet all these needs. Yeah. But then you can maybe have that bulleted item say, choosing polyurea versus epoxy. And you can even, and we'll talk about this more, link to a subservices page. But it's a way to kind of work in how your average typical customer is actually searching for not necessarily the exact right thing that you do, but the problems that you solve. Yeah. It's connective tissue. Yeah.
And you get that long tail. For the epoxy keyword you mentioned, there might be 5 or 6 people, depending on where you are, that search for that per month. But the intent is so high.
Yeah.
The intent is so high with those that you don't care really if the volume is high, because these are people that know exactly what their problem is and they're looking to solve it right now.
Yeah, so polyurea versus epoxy. So on the polyurea, if they search for that, the intent's very high, even though it's low volume. And then on the epoxy, the intent's probably pretty good and the volume's high. And so, but if you're not offering epoxy, it's a way to kind of work that in.
Yep.